Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you're all well and safe and managing to cope with the fires and the pandemic. I know this is an incredibly challenging time. So my name is Oliver O'Reilly. I'm a professor in mechanical engineering at UC Berkeley. I've been at Berkeley for 28 years. I was the vice chair for graduate studies in the Department of Mechanical Engineering for 4 years. I've been doing graduate admissions for probably 25 years, and currently I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies in the Division of Computing, Data Science, and Society. I wanted to welcome you all here again today. Today I'm going to talk about how to apply to graduate school and fail to get admitted. And the reason I put fail to get admitted is because that's exactly what happened to me when I applied back in 1985. And I learned some lessons from that experience, even though it was 35 years ago, that have remained with me to this day. And I've also seen from helping students and seeing thousands of applicants in the course of my career at Berkeley, what works and what doesn't work. And also what misconceptions students have about graduate education and applying to graduate school. So the talk is divided as follows. So I'm going to do about 10 topics. The first one is the big question a lot of people have: should I do a master's or a PhD? Then the second question is about funding. The second topic will be funding, then statements of purpose, which we all love writing. Then I'll talk about transcripts and GREs, letters of recommendation, which is a really important matter with applying to grad school, scholarships and scholarship applications, programs, interviews, visit days, and timeline. So what I'm going to do to try and help get more engagement here is, after each of these topics, I'm going to pause, and then I would like, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Melton will be gathering them, and then she will ask them of me, and hopefully I will answer them, as many of them as possible. In order to get through the talk by 6:30, I'll limit the answers to about 5 minutes. So in the course of my time at Berkeley, students from the Department of Mechanical Engineering have ended up going to all of these universities for graduate studies. So they range from UC San Diego, Georgia Tech, the Swiss Institute of Technology in Zurich, Princeton, Oxford. Some did go to Stanford, Caltech. Many stayed at Berkeley. Some went to Carnegie Mellon, some went to Harvard, and some went to Cornell. But they've gone all over the United States and throughout Europe. So many students ask me, are Berkeley students competitive when they apply for graduate school? And the answer is yes. And people understand that, you are in a public university which has, a much larger undergraduate population than many of our peer institutions, especially in terms of research. So for instance, the size of the mechanical engineering class at Cornell is much smaller than the mechanical engineering class at Berkeley. Similarly, the size of the mechanical engineering class at Stanford is much smaller than the undergraduate mechanical engineering class at Berkeley. And so in order to succeed at Berkeley, you have to navigate a large public institution. You have to become resilient, and you have to learn how to deal with bureaucracy. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself, and you have to learn all these different skills that really are invaluable in life. People don't have the impression that you're coddled here. They don't have the impression that you're not going to survive if you go to a much smaller graduate program. And so by doing well at Berkeley, you've proven yourself way more than just your GPA reflects. So the main question most students ask me is an MS or a PhD. And so I just wanted to go through the differences between them right now. First of all, master's programs are course-based, and your performance in courses is the key admissions criterion. So if you've got a 3.3, 3.4, 3.5 from Berkeley, that sort of means that you're going to be okay in any master's graduate program in the country. You're going to get through it. You're going to be fine. You've shown that you're capable of taking classes. the thing about master's programs is that you're expected to support yourself or fund yourself. So when you apply for a master's program only, it's understood that you're going to support yourself. You shouldn't expect to get a graduate teaching assistantship. You shouldn't expect to get a research fellowship. You should pretty much expect to pay the fees yourself. Now, if you get an NSF fellowship, you can use that fellowship to support your master's. And that happens in some cases, but it's an exception rather than the rule. Many schools with really very selective undergraduate programs, so Stanford, MIT, have much larger MS programs. This is particularly true of Stanford, which has a very large master's program. So when the admission criterion for getting into these master's programs is very different than undergraduate. And so some people think, oh, I got into this school and feel it's as if they got into the undergraduate program, and it's not quite. Their undergraduate program is very selective. Their graduate program is selective as well, but nothing compared to their undergraduate program. I also highly recommend the fifth-year master's program at Berkeley. They're pretty much bargains. If you are an in-state student, it's probably the top quality, affordable master's program in the country for engineering. Just be careful of the date. If you're a transfer student and you're starting your semester at Berkeley right now, or you're going to graduate in December 2022, then you need to apply this year for the fifth-year master's program. So you need to apply in this cycle. The admission to the master's program is very heavily dependent on your GPA. So please make sure that talk to people and make sure that your GPA is high enough so that you should be confident to get in. The PhD is a totally different animal. So for the PhD, your letters of recommendation are really important because the letters of recommendation are statements from faculty, usually, that say whether or not you're suited to doing research, what your temperament is like, what your skills are like, and how, what it's like to work with you as an individual. They're also written because faculty know what it's like to have students in their research groups, so they're based on experience with students doing research. So a faculty member may not know you that well, but they may know your temperament. They may have seen you in class. They've been judging students for PhD programs for a long time. And so this really helps in their evaluation. And this is where faculty trust each other as well throughout the country. The main thing in a PhD is that you need to get a match between your future advisor and the student. You also should, check yourself. Are you really interested in academics? So is the 0.1% of the class that you didn't get right and that don't fully understand, are you motivated to try and figure that out? Or it doesn't really matter that much to you? Those are the type of things you need to ask of yourself. Are you interested in something enough that you're going to spend 5 years looking at it? Even though a lot of people will think it's a niche problem or it's not very interesting, but are you interested enough in it yourself to want to do that? So in the admissions cycle, there's plenty of qualified applicants. So here at Berkeley, we get 800 and we probably have less than 100 slots. So the key is a match between the applicant and the advisor. So oftentimes we get lots of qualified applicants, but we don't have a match because the faculty member has a full research group and they're not hiring this year. And so finding that match is really the key. I can't emphasize that enough. So usually most faculty will hire 1 or 2 students a year. They'll make 1 or 2 offers in the expectation that one of the students will say yes and one of them will say no. But they're really looking at 1 or 2 applicants. So they may have 100 applicants to their group that are interested in their area, but they'll narrow it down to 1 or 2 students. So reaching out and making that personal connection is really, really important here. I often view the PhD as basically a hybrid between finding a job and applying to school. So when people are applying for graduate schools, they often think that it's exactly the same as applying for undergraduate. And it's not, it's completely different. Applying to master's programs is very similar to applying to undergraduate, but applying to PhD programs is not. It's really a hybrid, as I said, of applying for a job and applying for a school. You may be eminently qualified, but it just sometimes it's the luck of the draw that you don't have that match between the advisor and you at a particular school. So it's important, no matter how stellar you think your academic record is, to apply to several schools, because you're trying to find that match, and it's really important to do that. So you may have your dream school picked, you may have your dream advisor picked, but it's always good to apply to 5 or 6 schools just so you can see what's out there and just so you give yourself some opportunities in case 1 or 2 things don't work out. And so I'm going to pause right now so we can ask some questions and I can hopefully answer them.
Yeah. Thanks, Oliver. So we have several questions about GPA. So what is considered a competitive GPA? And we've got this in several different forms. So if you could answer for the 5th year, a regular master's, and the PhD, what would be considered competitive?
So first of all, you need a 3.0 GPA to apply to graduate schools. I've seen many students get in without a 3.0 GPA. You have to petition to do that. And usually it's because their circumstances are different or they have an exceptional research ability. But keeping your GPA above 3.0 to keep your options open is very, very important. For competitive programs, for competitive PhD programs, GPAs north of 3.75 are important. They're, for the 5th year masters, I would say a GPA above 3.5 is important. And so, but I can't emphasize enough that the letters of recommendation for the PhD is really, there's lots of students with 3.9 and higher GPAs, but if your letters of recommendation aren't very good or don't shine out, then it's going to be hard to knock through those doors.
Okay, so another question, we've got quite a few coming in now. Should you have links or relationships established with advisors of prospective schools?
Yes, you should be reaching out to prospective advisors from different schools now. Because you should be, at this point, you should be starting to look at different schools, different areas of research. Most faculty will get a lot of letters and a lot of emails from prospective students. So look at their labs and and reach out to students in the lab, because those students have been in the same situation that you have. And so they may be able to help you. If you're not getting a response from a faculty member, you write one email, it doesn't work, do a follow-up email and say, hey, I understand that your email is full. And I realize you're sort of overwhelmed right now, but I'm really interested in your program. And if you could pass me off to one of your graduate students so they could answer my questions, that would be great. Please put your questions in the Q&A. Keeping up with the chat is not possible.
Okay. Could a professor that you have a personal relationship with guarantee you a position in their lab before admission?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
But I would make sure it's in writing.
And how important are GREs for MS programs?
GREs, I don't think they're that important, but I'll talk about GREs later. It's one of the 11 topics that I wrote down earlier. I think there's issues with a lot of schools will be canceling requiring the GREs this year because of the pandemic, and I expect that will continue past the pandemic as well. So I think GREs are not, if you're from a school that no one has heard of, then the GREs can be very important. And they typically serve as an equalizer for people who don't go to schools with like great name recognition. So they're helpful for those students. But I do think the sea is changing on GREs right now.
Okay, so a follow-up question on the advisor. So many PhD programs accept to the university and then place with advisors after a couple of years. So as for the match you're talking about, do you mean we should identify a faculty member we would like to work for and mention that in our statement?
Yes, you should. And so basically when they admit you, a lot of schools will admit you with fellowships. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but essentially faculty in the school will have identified you as one of the people that, oh yeah, I could work with this person. So even though they may admit you and you can roam around for a year or two, they will be part of the selection process for that pool of students. Also, if you are going to apply for a PhD program, won't be that many faculty in the area that you're interested in working in, maybe 5 or 6 maximum. So it really is in your best interest to look at faculty in that program and ask yourself, can I work with this person? Are there 3 or 4 people in this school, in this department that I can work with? And if there aren't, then you should maybe try and find another school.
Okay. And do you have any advice on how to start finding the good match for a PhD program?
Yeah, so my recommendation is to start. What I would do is I would start talking to the GSIs that you're in your classes, because they've already gone through this process, and start talking to them about the process and what it's like and which were the good schools, because they will have gone to different schools and interviewed at different schools in the course of finding their way to Berkeley and finding their way to complete happiness at this amazing institution. So they will have a lot of experience with this process, and you should ask them about it. That's one place to start. The second place is also the internet, of course. But your GSIs, ask them and see what they have to say. And explain what topics you're interested in, what your research interests are like, and ask them for their recommendations. Similarly, talk to your professors and ask them. Say, I'm interested in this area. What are the good schools that I should go to? And if possible, try and do this in your junior year. The earlier you start, the better.
Okay, and then perhaps one more question before we
Sure,
move on?
we can do 1 or 2 more actually.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Milton.
So some companies only hire PhDs for analytical fields such as heat transfer or combustion. If we want to work in these fields, is it worth getting a PhD for this sole purpose or for this sole reason, even if we don't want a career in academia?
It's really, it's really up to you. I mean, if a company only will hire PhDs from 3 or 4 schools, then, and you really want to work with that company, then yeah, you better go get a PhD. But it's a personal journey. And so if it's 5 years, it will have its ups and downs. And the question is, do you ask yourself, am I that interested in this field? And am I that interested in this company to pursue this? I also think, there's talk I saw one question about, applying to going off to industry and then coming back to do a PhD. That's completely possible. But in my experience, most of the people in PhD programs do so right after their undergraduate. Because going out in industry for a few years and then having to come back and be a student for a while is not, life goes on and you will develop different interests. Your life will change. You may have a partner, you may have a family, and asking your family to put things aside so you can go and do a PhD for 5 years, for many people will be very challenging. So if you look around, you don't see many people coming back from industry to do PhDs. And the reason for that is just, that you leave school, you move on with your life, you eat better food than ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you develop a taste for life. And it's really hard to go back to living on less than $30,000 a year.
Okay, and then one more question. How can transfers get into the 5th year master's? I only became interested after finding out my 2nd year here. I don't have any research experience currently. Am I screwed?
So what you should do is you should go and talk to Ricky Vides. And remember, the master's is completely based on coursework. It's not based on research. So reach out to Ricky and ask him for advice. But the answer to no, Um, and I hope you're enjoying your time at Berkeley. So I would reach out to Ricky. If you have no area of interest, then you should really ask yourself, why am I doing a PhD? A PhD is really about being really interested in something, like really interested in dynamics, the greatest subject on earth, or heat transfer, which is pretty relevant right now to our climate change. But you should be interested in something really passionately, because if you're not, then it's going to be really hard to do. Fluids is also a very interesting topic. And this is a shout out to Tanya on the chat. So you should be really interested in something. You should be passionate about it if you want to do a PhD.
Okay, and then before you move on, Oliver, I just wanted to comment. So the fifth year program is not just for ME students. There's other departments that have a fifth year, yeah?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And so if you're in another department, contact your graduate student department advisor about the fifth year. So in ME, it's Ricky Vides, but other departments have their own designated fifth year program, and it should be on their website.
Yes.
So, more questions, or should we?
We can move on, and then I can follow back at the very end for any questions that are left over.
Great.
I probably most of the people on this webinar are engineers, and we're not really used to writing about ourselves, and so writing these statements of purpose is really like pulling teeth. And going to the dentist is probably an easier thing to do than writing these. So in this statement of purpose, so at Berkeley, you have to write a statement of purpose and a personal history statement. So for the statement of purpose, you should discuss your research interests and academic history. So, where you went to school, what are your research interests? Now, you shouldn't be modest, because what you want to do here is you want to help others help you. And that should be something that you remember all the way through this application process. Helping others help you is really important. If no personal history statement is required, then give a brief synopsis of what you would write in a personal history statement. So for all other schools other than Berkeley, you should talk a little bit about yourself, where you came from, what why you are where you are right now, and why you want to go further, like why you want to do a master's, why you want to do PhD. If you have an inspiring COVID-19 story, mention it here. Like if you've done community service, if you've done tutoring, if you've done research on COVID-19 related topics, this is the place to talk about that. So this is the place to say like what you did to take care of yourself during COVID-19. If you don't have any big stories to tell, that's fine too. But if you do, this is maybe the place to mention it. So the statement of purpose is used by admissions committees to look at your case. So suppose you have good transcript, good letters of recommendation, and you've got a pretty solid statement of purpose. In the admissions meetings where faculty gather around and talk about different applicants and try and figure out like, oh, I really like this person, I would like to nominate them for a fellowship that the university has, this is where these statements become really important. So when you write these statements, pretend you're writing them for your best friend who's going to go into a room of strangers and advocate for you. So you want to give them as much information, positive information as possible about yourself, because you want to help them help you. And this is really important. You all have amazing stories to tell. You all have great things to say about yourself. And so what you want to do is write them as if you're going to tell them to your best friend, who's then going to go into a room and advocate for you. Because what happens is that faculty take these statements when they're discussing potential fellowships, and they use them to say, well, the person I want to support for this fellowship is this, and this is all the things they did, and this is some of their personal history, and this is the reason why they would be a really good suit for our school, and this is why they would come here if we gave them this fellowship. And so that's what you want to be able to do. And so a good statement of purpose gives someone as much information as possible so they can advocate for you. And I can't emphasize that enough. When in this process, you want to help others help you. It's not that you're being immodest. it's not that you're, talking about yourself and boasting. You're helping someone else help you. So the other statement is the personal history statement. It's only used in the University of California. You should say where you're coming from, where you are right now, and where you want to go to. They're used for internal scholarships, for equity, diversity, and inclusion. So if you have experience tutoring, helping with social justice movements, this is the place to talk about that. And this is the place to say what you're doing to help other people, what you're doing to help people make your classrooms and your world more inclusive and less, and to basically help with the challenges of social injustice that we're dealing with right now. Again, you may wish to discuss how you've handled the pandemic. This is a good place to discuss that now. If you don't have any good stories about the pandemic, and you don't have, this has been a tough time for everybody, so people understand that as well. And this admission cycle will be different because of the pandemic. So I just want to open it up for do you have any questions about these statements?
Well, we have lots of questions that are from prior as well.
Sure.
So one question is, this is more about letters of recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So do recommendation letters from scientists working at national laboratories carry the same weight as letters from faculty?
No. Letters from faculty usually carry more weight. Not always, but in a lot of cases.
Okay.
But you can always, if you have 3 letters from faculty and 1 letter from a scientist at a national lab, then you can just have 4 letters.
There's a lot of questions about applying to more than one program at a time.
Yeah.
So
I usually recommend you apply to at least 5 programs. And the reason for that is that if you get admitted to some of the programs, you want to be able to, compare, you want to be able to contrast, and you also want to make sure that you don't leave any stone unturned. The limit on the number of applicants is really how you should be upfront about how many letters you're going to ask from the people that you're asking letters from, and I'll talk more about that later. But you should really apply to at least 3 or 4 schools. You shouldn't leave, especially for the PhD program, you shouldn't leave it to one professor at one school to decide your fate. You should give yourself more options.
And then following up on that, there's quite a few questions about, can you, specifically at Berkeley, can you apply to the 5th year program, the MS program, and the PhD program all at the same time?
No, you can only apply to one program at Berkeley at a time.
Okay. And how would you recommend writing the statement of purpose for the 5th year master's if we're not choosing a research focus?
Then talk about what you hope to gain from the 5th year masters, what are the courses you want to take. You should look ahead at the schedule of classes and make sure that the classes that you're interested in taking are being offered, and then how they fit into what you want to do later on.
And for the statement of purpose, if we have a lot of experience, how do we not sound like we're just listing them?
Well, I mean, you're writing a story. You're not writing a bullet list. So you think of it like you're writing a story. What's your story? Like, if you have this list, how did you go from one to the other? And so describe that process.
Okay. And then in the statement of purpose, how would you balance talking about research experience, your research goals and interests, who you are interested in working with, and your passion for science, i.e. which topics should dominate?
You should balance all 3. Perhaps give a paragraph, 1 or 2 paragraphs to each of those, but try and balance them if possible. And also, if you're saying, I want to work with this one professor in your statement of purpose, I would be careful about that. Like, make sure that there are 1 or 2 other professors in the research in the department that you want to work with as well.
Okay. And how do MS and PhD personal statements differ in content? For example, PhD applicants would need to discuss their research interests, but what would master's applicants typically write about?
Pretty much their future plans, the courses that they're interested in, and what their academic interests are. What do they want to do after this? What are their career goals?
Would you recommend applying to a graduate program and then applying for PhD once the graduate program is done? I assume this means a master's. So would you recommend applying to a master's program and then a PhD?
No, I mean, this is going to take a lot of work. And so I recommend that you apply for the master's and PhD, like you apply for the graduate program. That gives you the option to do a PhD if that's what you want to do. It's going to take a lot of work. It's the equivalent of a 3-unit class, and you don't have to redo that again in another year or two.
And do you have to state a specific professor you're interested in working with in the statement of purpose?
No, you don't. But you should you should try and tailor your statement of purpose so that people will feel, oh, they actually, looked at our website and saw what we were working on, or they looked at my latest paper, so they know the problems, the faculty in this department are interested in. It shouldn't be a generic statement. You should try and tailor part of it to the individual school.
Okay. Would my personal statement for graduate school admission differ from that for fellowships?
It depends on yes. For fellowships, for NSF and ND-SEG, your statement will basically say, I'm applying to all of these different schools. For your statement of purpose, you really want to target it. You want to target it, each of them to the individual schools that you're applying to. So don't write a statement to Berkeley and then say, I'm applying to, this professor at MIT is really the person I'm interested in working with, and vice versa.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have specifically about statements.
Okay. Thanks, Melton. Yep. So for your transcript, most people will really look at your junior year and the type of courses you're taking. So in graduate applications, the GPA can be used as a cutoff. So unfortunately, doing well in your classes is important. Again, like I said earlier, a 3.0 GPA is really, you will need that to get into most graduate programs. So regardless of what you do, even if you're not interested in applying to graduate school right now, and you may be interested in doing an MBA later, keeping your GPA above 3.0 is really a good idea. It just keeps the doors open. GPA is used as a filter for a lot of faculty will look through their application pool and just basically filter by GPA. So be careful of that. So when you're reaching out to faculty, if your GPA is not that high, suppose it's 3.5 and you're applying to very competitive PhD programs and you've got very strong letters of recommendation, please make sure you address that. When you're reaching out to faculty, please make sure you address that so that they're aware of it, so they won't just blindly filter your application away. I believe the GREs will be optional for many schools this year and will probably not be that won't be considered much in the future. That's my gut take. I haven't heard any official news on that, but that's my impression. If you are going to take it, do it while you're in school. The results carry for 3 to 5 years, so just do it now. You're really good at taking exams right now. You're around people, and this is the same for the engineering and training exams as well. Do as many of these exams that you may need later on now. You have friends. This is where you're really good at taking exams, and always do these, tutoring and guidance. I did the GREs. I didn't prepare at all. I completely tanked them, and it was just terrible. It really put me behind the 8 ball for a while, but that was 35 years ago. When I came to this country, then I realized there were all these prep courses and all these books that would be really helpful for the exam. So please, if you're going to take the exam, just, go to Barnes and Noble and just crack open some of those guidebooks, and they're really, really helpful for these exams. It depends on your, so Shirley in the chat, it really depends on your letters of recommendation and your research experience. Again, I've seen people with, 3.5 GPAs getting into really the top graduate programs because of their letters of recommendation and because they had research experience. So it really depends on your letters of recommendation. So I'm not sure if there's any questions. Any more questions? Melton, it's quieting down a little bit, I think.
No, actually, we've got we have one more follow-up from the previous one, a statement on the statements.
Sure.
Some inquiring about how technical they should get when they're talking about their research.
You can get fairly technical, but remember, you're trying to speak to maybe 10 people on a committee. So getting really specific may not help you. Like the advantages of PID control, over machine learning, that's an okay statement to make. I'm sure a lot of mechanical engineers feel that way. But getting into the nuts and bolts of like theorem 1 on page 10 of someone's textbook, I would not go that detailed. So try and keep it as high level as possible, remembering who your audience is. If you want to be really technical to one specific faculty member, then send them an email.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions on specifically about GPA.
Mm-hmm.
So if your GPA is slightly on the lower end, say 3.2, 3.3, what else can you do to increase your chances for the fifth-year master's?
Letters of recommendation. And some people just have really, challenging semesters. So, talk to the people that you're writing. Talk to the people that you're writing to, who are writing for you, and have a talk to them before you apply, before they write the letters of recommendation. But really just, help people who are writing letters of recommendation help you. So go and talk to them. And a lot of times, people just have one bad semester, and that can really lower your GPA. So, explain that to the people who are writing your letters. Just in the chat, like the important publications and independent research, yeah, publications can be very important because they show that you can do research, but it's not really the publications that are important, because a lot of times undergraduates are like authors on, 10, 15 co-authored papers. It's really the experience you've gotten by doing that research and what the letter writers can say about you as a result of that research. That's what's important.
So if your GPA is lower than 3.75, 3.5, would taking the GRE and doing well on it be beneficial?
Yeah, it may be beneficial, but but some schools won't be taking the GRE this year, so it may be better to try and, build relationships with your letters of recommendation writers and take the time to do that rather than doing the GREs.
Okay. And then for the fifth-year master's, does my GPA have to be at least 3.5 to apply? And if so, does that GPA include my community college grades if I transferred?
No, the GPA only depends on your grades at Berkeley, and especially your junior year grades. Those are the ones that are important. They don't include your community college grades. And again, if you think like, oh, my GPA is below 3.5, I'm wondering, should I apply? Well, if you really want to go into the fifth-year master's program, then I would recommend that you apply and, talk to your letter of recommendation writers about that. Because again, Berkeley is not an easy place, and it's especially not, no university has been easy because of the pandemic. So, talk to your letter writers about that.
Okay. Does having a lower GPA but with harder or more relevant courses outweigh a higher GPA with more standard courses?
Yes, it can. And again, your letters of recommendation writers should know that, and they should be able to advocate for you because of that. So this is where building relationships with the people who are writing your letters of recommendation is really important. You know, they should know you. You should take the time to help them help you.
Okay. Do grades from senior fall matter?
Yeah, they can matter. Yeah. I mean, they can help you, certainly.
And when you're talking about GPA, are these overall GPAs or technical GPAs?
Both.
Okay. There might be a few more, but I think we can move on to the next subject. And
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of letters of recommendation, you're going to need 3 letters from academics for PhD programs. You can use, you know, intern experiences and industry experience, interns, letters from people you've interned with, letters from scientists at the national labs. You can use those as well. But really, letters from academics are really the most important thing, because, you know, if I'm applying to industry, then I want to get letters from people in industry. If I'm applying for a specific department, or if I'm applying to a business school, I'd like to get letters from business, etc. So getting letters from academics who have experience doing research and experience supervising students, they use that experience and their expertise in writing the letters of recommendation for you, so they know what to say. They know what faculty are looking for when they're looking for prospective PhD students. And if you have those qualities, they'll bring those qualities out. So I would recommend that you ask your letter writers for an appointment at the beginning of the fall semester when you're applying, and ask them what they need from you to write the strongest possible letter for you. Okay, and also what deadlines they have for completing the letters. So the deadline is really important, because it's often, you know, oftentimes you're going to be a little bit overwhelmed with the process, and then sending people requests for letters of recommendation in the middle of finals week or R&R week really goes down like a lead balloon. Ideally, you want all the requests in by the middle of November. So let me explain how it works. So you apply to a PhD program or a master's program. So you log into the portal, and they ask you to do your statement of purpose. They also ask you for the contact information of your letters of recommendation. So you should fill in as much detail as possible about the letter of recommendation writer. So this can take some time. Like, they want to know the title, they want to know the school, they want to know the email address, they want to know the phone number. So have all of those things at hand for all of your letter writers, so it's easy to input into their portal. The second thing is that you want to be able to tell, you also want to know what program you're applying to, and you want to write down those programs to the letter writer. So when I get so suppose you apply to the University of Michigan in the Department of Aerospace Engineering to the PhD program. Well, then Michigan will send me a request after you've submitted my information, asking for the letter of recommendation. But it won't tell me which school you're applying to. It won't tell me which program you're applying to. Sorry, it won't tell me which department you're applying to, and it won't tell me which program you're applying to. So telling me that ahead of time is really important. So when I write the letter of recommendation, I can just put all of that into the letter of recommendation. I can tailor the letter of recommendation to you, to the program you're applying to, and what level you're applying. Are you applying to a master's or PhD? You also give a list of these to the letter writers so that they know, oh, I've received requests from Michigan, Caltech, Stanford, MIT, Georgia Tech, Berkeley. I'm done. I've all those letters taken care of now. And if they see on that list, oh, the person applied to Rutgers and I haven't received a request from Rutgers yet, they'll know to wait for that to come in. But it's really important that you give the letter writers as much of this detail as possible. So you need to help them help you. And you also need to appreciate from them that they're usually, when they make a commitment to write a letter of recommendation, they take that seriously, because we are also asked to we also have to ask people to write letters of recommendation for us. So faculty are always asking other faculty members at other schools to write letters of recommendation for them. And so we know what it's like, and it's not easy to ask for a letter. It's always a little bit humbling. So we understand that it's not the easiest thing to do, but we also, because we've also been in the same boat, we also respect that. And we also know, and most of us will never forget the people who wrote letters of recommendation for us way back in the day. Like, I still remember the people who wrote my letters of recommendation for graduate school. And I still remember the people who wrote letters of recommendation for my tenure case, and so on. You don't forget those names, and I'm eternally grateful to them. Also, once you enter the information, the schools send out requests to the faculty to submit letters of recommendation. All of the schools have different deadlines, so it's really important that you get all of the information in. Berkeley's deadline and MIT's are the earliest, they're the very beginning of December. So get the letters, get all the requests for the letters in by the middle of November at the latest. So then the faculty member can sit down, crank through all 7 or 8 letters for you, submit them all in one go, and then it's done. And they feel good that they've done all of that, and you won't feel anxious that you're still waiting to hear about some faculty member submitting letters in the middle of finals when they've got all these exams to grade, and etc. So doing this early is really, really important. So the things you should also send thank you notes to the faculty who are writing letters for you. It is a really nice thing to do. I have a bunch of thank you cards in my office, and I keep them. I get several every year, and I really appreciate them. And you should do the same thing. It's a really nice gesture. It acknowledges that the faculty member has done some work for you, and you're appreciative of it. And it also, helps them help you. Don't ask for letters at the last minute, unless it's an emergency and some faculty member who promised to write you a letter is now sick and can't do it. And then if it is at the last minute, then, explain. And it's happened to me. 1 or 2 students came last year and said this faculty member was sick and wasn't able to write letters. Could I do it for them? And it was not an issue at all. Sometimes there's good reasons for this, but in general, don't do it. Don't badger the letter writer. If they say that they're going to write a letter for you by a certain time, let them do that. If they haven't done it by a certain time, then write back to them and say, hey, is anything I can help with? But, sending them emails every night, asking them if they've written the letter doesn't look good for you. And it really puts them in a bad light as well. If a letter writer asks that you provide paper, so I usually ask for a draft statement of purpose, draft personal history statement if they're applying to Berkeley, transcripts, and any evidence that they have, like of research or anything that can help me write a strong letter for them. And I usually ask them to submit that to me by Halloween. So that way I have everything ready to go. I can spend the month of November writing letters. I typically write letters for 20 to 30 students. So it can go from anywhere from 200 to 300 letters of recommendation every year if you include fellowships. So having this run smoothly and giving me the information I need ahead of time is really important. And I'm not alone here. A lot of faculty write that many letters. So giving them all this information ahead of time is really important. Again, don't assume that the online submission for the school will tell the writer the program you're applying to. Give the letter writer a list of the schools you're applying to and the programs, the departments you're applying to, and the Ph.D. or master's programs you're applying to as well. Don't use a letter service for engineering graduate schools, because every one of them has different questions that they ask each individual letter writer. So when I submit a letter to Caltech, say, they ask me certain questions about you that are unique to Caltech. Similarly, MIT does the same thing. Stanford does the same thing. Georgia Tech does the same thing. So I need to be able to answer those questions specifically, and those are used to filter as a screen to filter your letters of recommendation. So when you use a letter service, they don't use that. So that's why you have to do it individually. And it's really important that you do that. So let me just open it up for questions.
Okay, we have lots of questions. How do you create relationships with people whom you might ask letters of recommendation from?
So the first thing to do is to go to office hours and, ask questions in office hours. Second thing is that, like, usually you're taking courses with people. So when you're taking courses with people, if there's one or two and you want to do a PhD, and the subject is interesting to you, go to town on one of the homework problems and do way beyond what's asked of you in the homework problem, and then bring it to the professor and talk to them about it. Or if they mention something in class that you think is really interesting, follow up on that and then come back and talk to the professor about it. But really try and build a relationship, try and build a dialogue, especially in office hours. Most people's office hours are not very busy, especially when you get to the junior, senior level. And so, you take advantage of office hours. Also, if professors have big labs, they usually have a lot of undergraduate research opportunities there. So take advantage of those. Take advantage of the undergraduate research apprenticeship program. Take advantage of the undergraduate research programs that the College of Engineering has. That's really, those are the avenues that I would look to.
Okay, and then we have this question, has been asked several times. So are letters from a community college professor as strong as a letter from a four-year Berkeley school?
They can be, but I mean, if you're applying for a PhD program, I would definitely recommend you get letters from the school that you're getting your bachelor's degree from. And one of the reasons for that is that if you're not interested enough to build relationships with your professors at the school that you're in, then that really sort of makes people ask the question, well, are they really interested in academics? Are they really interested in a PhD? So if you are going for a PhD, I highly recommend building relationships with faculty, because doing a PhD is building a personal relationship with a faculty member that you're going to do research with for 5 years. And, they will be a very important part of your life. So if you're not developing relationships like that as an undergraduate, then, you really should ask yourself the question, well, am I really that suited to doing a PhD?
And on that note, top PhD programs require 3 letters of recommendation. But what if some of your letters are better than others based on how much work you have done with the faculty member or the letter writer?
They all average out. So, you may have 3 letters, 2 of them may be phenomenal and the other one may be meh. But, people who are on the graduate admissions program know what it's like to have to get these letters. And they know that like 1 or 2 of them will be terrific. And it's generally, you don't really see 3 phenomenal letters of recommendation.
Okay. And are recommendation letters from a mentor from an internship or industry accepted or carry the same weight as one from a professor?
No, they don't generally, not in my experience. And again, it's like, if you're applying for an industry job, then the letter from industry it will be more important than a faculty member's, and vice versa. But if you're applying to a PhD program, you're really applying based on your academic interests. And the people who were writing letters for you, who are faculty, will know what to look for in someone who's going to embark on a PhD, because they will have experience supervising students to do that.
Okay, and what about letters from graduate students?
No, I mean, it's fine, but those letters won't carry much weight.
Okay. So this one goes back to sort of your opening. So you said that you did not get into any graduate programs the first time you applied for grad schools. Is it a red flag for the university to apply to that same program in the future?
No, it's not at all. No. Your application, with the new system, your application will show up. So they will see the fact that you've applied already, because all of these systems are not computerized. When I was applying, it was everything was paper. And so if you applied 1 or 2 times, people probably didn't even realize that. And it was only after the fact that I found out like several years later that one of the reasons I didn't get in to one school was because one of the people I asked to write letters of recommendation, who who I had asked to write a letter of recommendation, forgot to do it. So that's one of the reasons why I give this talk.
So for letters of recommendation, can I receive a letter from both the lab PI as well as my postdoc mentor, or is this redundant?
That would sort of be redundant. You're much better off asking the PI, who will in turn talk to the postdoc, your postdoc supervisor, and they will probably draft it together.
Okay, and are letters from tenured professors better than those from assistant professors?
Not necessarily, because some assistant professors will, no, it really depends on how well they know you and how much they, how they're willing to advocate for you.
Should we aim to get letters from faculty that are related in what we want to do, or does it not matter?
Yeah, you should try and get letters from faculty, because when you talk to them and ask them for letters of recommendation, you should also ask them what schools they think you should reply to and what areas you should apply to. And that's really important. So you should, you should use the faculty here and ask them, like, where are the good programs in the area I'm interested in? And also ask them, like, would they be willing to just, send an email to a faculty member at a school that you really want to work at on your behalf.
This is more of a GPA issue, but it's one that's coming up quite a bit. I'm a transfer student where my junior year, spring semester are all pass, no pass due to COVID. So I only have one semester of letter grades so far. Would that affect my admissions decision?
It shouldn't, because you can explain why you took the classes pass, no pass. And your transcript will be noted that. And I think everybody's going to look at the spring 2020 grades with a grain of salt.
Okay. So there are several questions about how are spring 2020 grades going to be looked at during this admissions process?
They're going to be viewed under I think they're going to be viewed, they're not going to be really considered as heavily as your grades from other semesters. I think your grades from the fall will carry a little more weight, and your grades from the fall of 2020 and 2019 will probably carry more weight.
Okay, and then back to letters. Should we only get letters of recommendation from professors who taught our upper division classes?
No, it really depends on, if you had a terrific relationship with your professor from your, sophomore, junior year, freshman, sophomore year, then ask them.
And if two of my recommendation writers are faculty that I've worked closely with, is it okay if the third is one that I've only taken a class with?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay. And people will understand that.
And is a recommendation letter from a former employee valuable for MS admissions? I think they mean a former employer.
It can be, but really for masters, you're really looking at, like, can you do the courses? Are you going to come in and take care of all the courses?
Okay, and then in general, how important are letters for MS programs and what role do they play?
MS programs are, the importance of letters for MS programs are really like, if you're a student who's going to come in here to this program, what are you going to contribute to the program? Number one, and number two, do you have the technical skills to get through the program, to be able to do the courses, to be able to carry the coursework? So the first thing I look for in students applying to MS programs is, can they do the courses? Because the courses in graduate level can be more challenging than undergraduate. You do less courses, but the technical level is much higher. So can you do that? Can you do those courses? And secondly, what experiences are you going to bring to the classes that will help the program? Like, what experiences do you have? Like, suppose you spent 2 summers working for SpaceX. Well, that's going to bring a lot to the program. Or you spent 1 summer working at Apple and then the other one working at Waymo. when you come to the program, you're going to bring, as a master's student, you're going to bring some experience to the program that will be special and that will be valued.
So if I'm taking a few years if I'm a few years out of school by the time I apply to grad school, took some time to gain work experience, narrow my focus for grad school, how might I go about asking for letters of recommendation?
If you are going to be out of school for a while, I would stay in touch with the faculty. So maybe in the spring, write to the faculty members who are going to ask for letters of recommendation later on, and just stay in touch with them. Because you want to keep that relationship.
Mm-hmm. So one of my letter providers asked me to write the draft of the letter. Do you have any advice?
Just, help them help you. They may just throw your draft in the wastebasket and start from scratch. They may use the draft to sort of get a better idea of what you want to do, so they can write a better letter for you. So, but just write it as if you're helping them help you.
So if I work in a big lab where the most contact I have with my PI are 2 weekly group meetings, how should I build a relationship with them so that they can write a good letter?
So you should, if you're working in a lab, you're usually working with someone else, like with a graduate student or a postdoc. Build a relationship with the graduate student and postdoc. And then when it comes time to writing the letter, getting a letter, the PI will ask the postdoc and the graduate student you're working under for information. And also make it clear, ask the faculty member at the beginning, like, hey, I would like to use this experience to learn how to do research, but also to build my portfolio so I can ask people for letters of recommendation. So make sure that the faculty member is aware of that. And most faculty are, but it's a good idea just to reach out and just give them a gentle reminder.
I believe I have 2 professors I can get strong letters from, but I'm having trouble thinking of the third. Would a letter from the GSI, who was my instructor for a class over the summer at Berkeley, who knows me well, be as strong as a letter from a professor? If not, do you have any advice?
Yeah, ask the professor whose class you did best in, and go and talk to them and ask them for a letter and explain your situation. Explain that you have 2 strong letters, but you need a third. And that you focused on building a relationship with these other faculty, and that you've done well in the class, and would you be willing to write a good letter for me?
Okay, and is it better to get letters from US institutions?
Not necessarily. It really depends on the relationship you have with the faculty member. So getting a letter from another institution can be terrific.
So I worked on a research project with a GSI who's now a professor at Notre Dame. Would it be okay to reach out to him to write me a letter of recommendation?
Yes. That would be fine.
Okay, and if you want to go for a master's in a program that's different from your undergraduate major, how should you ask for letters from faculty?
Just explain why you want to do that master's in a different area. I mean, if it's in engineering, they're all fairly closely related anyway. But you also need to write you're going to need to write a strong statement as to why you want to switch fields. And also, do you have the technical skills to do the classes in that area to do a master's?
Okay, and is it okay to have 2 out of 3 letters from faculty you took a class with?
Yes.
If you're applying to your undergraduate institution, is it a problem if the professors writing your letters may end up being on the admissions committee?
No, and it's understood that that's going to happen at Berkeley anyway.
Okay. There might be
it's also a good opportunity to have them get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, so if a GSI from a class I took who I knew well writes a letter on behalf of the professor from my class, but I didn't know the professor that well, is that acceptable if the professor signs it?
That's between the professor and the GSI.
Okay, think that's most of them. I may have missed a few, and I apologize. There's a lot of questions, but we'll try to get to more towards the end.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Milton. And thanks everybody for asking these questions. I hope my answers have been helpful. So for scholarships, if you're applying for fellowships, if you're applying for PhD programs, I recommend that you apply for fellowships while you're working on the applications for a variety of reasons. One is that you're going to be asking people for letters of recommendation, and they will be using those letters as templates for writing fellowship support letters for you. Secondly, it forces you to think a little bit more about like what area I want to work in. Now, for all of these fellowships, the NSF, NDSEG, you have to write a research proposal, but all you're trying to do is to show people that you can that you can write a research proposal, that you've thought about enough about research to be able to write a research proposal. There's also lots of workshops at Berkeley to help you with this. And so you should take advantage of that. So doing it right now, even if you are a senior, means you're going to be fine-tuning your skills for writing statements of purpose. You're also going to be refining your skills for writing research proposals. And it just tunes you up, and it shows people who are on admissions committees that you're self-motivated and that you're willing to, champion yourself and go out there and work for things. The NDSEG, the NSF, there's about probably 50 to 100 given out every year in mechanical engineering. It can be a bit hit or miss as to who gets it. And I often think it's a bit of a crapshoot who gets the NSF. But if you don't apply for it, you're not part of that. So in a way, the NSF is a little bit like a lottery, but it's a phenomenal scholarship. And if you get it, it'll open up the doors for admission to a lot of schools, because it's 3 years of funding at $36,000 a year stipend, plus all your fees are taken care of. It gives you tremendous freedom. So I highly recommend you apply for it as an undergrad. It's just worth its weight to do it. The Hertz Fellowship is also pretty generous, but it's really difficult to get. It's also a lot of work for letter writers. So I generally tend to not recommend people applying to the Hertz Fellowship, just because it's a lot of work for the letter writers, it's a lot of work for the students, and frankly, I haven't seen very few people from Berkeley ever get it. The GEM Fellowship is also a good one to apply to. You have to team up with a company, but it's also a very valuable scholarships. The other fellowships and scholarships are internal. So most schools have their own internal fellowships. So Berkeley, for instance, has the Berkeley, the chancellors, and one-year fellowship. So in mechanical engineering, there's typically 5 or 6 people who get the Berkeley fellowship every year on the admission cycle, 5 or 6 chancellors, and then maybe 5 or 6 one-year fellowships. So these cover your costs of Berkeley for either 1 to 2 years. They're really worth their weight in gold. They give you a lot of freedom, and these fellowship, the internal ones, are all based on your statements of purpose, letters of recommendation, transcript, and also how you present yourself. So on these admissions committees, people will be talking to each other. There's a limited number of these available. And so, having people championing you and helping you is really important for these. So other schools also have 1-year fellowships that are similar to Berkeley's, and some schools have a 1-semester fellowship. And so those are all picked by faculty members. So when you are talking to faculty, really remember this. Graduate students at the schools are the best source of information for this. The application processes and the availability of these fellowships change year by year. So reaching out to graduate students in the schools that you're applying to is really a great resource and something that's really worth doing, because they'll tell you the ins and outs and ups and downs of applying to the particular school, the resources that those schools have available to you, and they'll give you sort of an inside look on what's happening. But use graduate students both at Berkeley and at the other schools to help you with this process. What I propose, Melton, is that we just move on ahead with a few more topics, just because I realize we're running nearly out of time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So when you're looking for programs, the websites are the first place. And then I also ask graduate students at Berkeley, ask your GSIs. Also ask faculty at Berkeley. So when you're asking for letters of recommendation, ask faculty like, where else should I apply? What schools are good? For instance, UC Santa Barbara has a fantastic controls department. Mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering at UCSD is an up and coming program. There are all these types of information that people are aware of that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but these are the things to ask people about. Also ask them, what it was like to apply, what were visit day like, but really use the resources that are at Berkeley to help you with this. When you are visiting a school, ask the graduate students and faculty about their admissions process and look for webinars at schools for applicants. Because everything is remote this semester, schools will be having these types of webinars for applications. Make sure you go to those. The hardest thing for PhDs is just to identify potential PhD advisors. So use the resources that are at Berkeley for that. And again, reach out to graduate students in other departments, in the departments where you're going to be applying for information and help. And the last thing I want to talk about before I open up for more questions is for your emails to faculty at prospective schools and for your emails at faculty at Berkeley, remember that every email is an interview. So, check the spelling, check the grammar, check the tone, check the format, and just best practice. Imagine if the email showed up on the San Francisco Chronicle. Would you be happy about it or sad? So just use the San Francisco Chronicle as sort of a metric as to whether or not the email is any good. Ask your friends for advice on the tone of an email if it's going to be an important one to a faculty member. But remember, every email is an interview. And just always remember that going through this process. It's a good thing to do to just self-edit yourself. The other thing is that every email to a faculty member that you send, so if you send me an email, it's a private email. And so I have to be respectful of that, and I can't share it with the rest of the world. However, when I respond to someone's email who I don't know very well, I have to assume that that email is going to be posted online. It could be shown on Reddit, Chronicle, wherever. So sometimes if the email is asked a question that I can't answer, then I don't respond to it. And so just be mindful of that when you write letters. Also be mindful of the fact that, people receive hundreds, especially now, receive hundreds of emails a day. So having it short, concise, and to the point, with maybe even bullet points, is really a great idea. You want to capture the person's attention, so then they will follow up and respond to you. So don't write massive, long 2-page emails, because people nowadays, with people reading so much email, they don't often have time to go through all of it and figure out every nuance. So for interviews for graduates, once the applications open, faculty usually start looking at the applicants usually in December and over the holiday break. And then oftentimes they will reach out to you and ask you to set up a Zoom interview or a Skype interview. And these are the pre-interviews that they're going to start doing probably in January, late December, early January. If you're not serious about a school, don't do these interviews, because you're just going to let yourself down and waste people's time. So if you decide in the middle of the process, I'm not really that interested in going to the school because my partner is going to go to another school in a different area, then just be frank about it and just say that. Don't waste people's time, because it's a small world and it's just not good karma to do that. The pre-interviews that people do are basically they're going through their applicant pool and they're trying to find this match between the students and the research advisors. So they're going to be probably interviewing 10 or 20 people as they try and narrow it down to maybe a handful of people that they're going to invite for visit day and do a series more interviews. So be mindful of that. Just because you get an interview in early January doesn't mean that you're going to get invited to their visit days, even if the visit days are virtual. If you are asked to, to set up a Zoom interview, don't jump on it and say, oh, I can do it tomorrow. Give yourself a day or two of time so you can actually do some research on the person who's interviewing you. So you will have questions for them when things get quiet during the conversation. And always have like 4 or 5 questions ready to ask them. So if there's a lull in the conversation, you were able to ask a question immediately. Go onto their website, go onto researchgate.net and see their latest papers. So take a read of their latest papers. And don't necessarily mention their papers, but be ready to talk about them if the need occurs. So being prepared for them is really important. You're going to be doing a PhD. A PhD is about research, it's about academic interest, it's about academic curiosity. So if the only thing you're going to talk about is funding and funded research opportunities when you talk to someone on these interviews, that's really a red flag. That really sort of says that you're not really that interested in this person's research, you're more interested in getting funding for a PhD. And it's so you're putting the cart before the horse. So be really careful about doing that. So why don't we open it up here for some questions?
Okay. So if you are a senior applying this semester, is it okay to ask current professors for letters of recommendation, even though we've only known them for a month or so?
Yes, but build that relationship.
Okay.
So you want to build that relationship so the letter is as strong as possible.
What if you realize during your PhD program, year 1, that you no longer want to pursue academia in that field? What options do you have at that point?
So typically the option would be to get a master's and leave. And that happens. A lot of people, it's a long journey, and, some people come, they find that, oh, this is not the big deal I thought it was. And they decide they're just going to get a master's and leave. And that's perfectly fine.
Thoughts on attending the same school for PhD as undergrad?
I think if it's Berkeley, that's great. Some of the best students I've had have 3 or 4 degrees from Berkeley. It really depends on the research advisor that you're going to have for your PhD. So it's really, if you're here and you have this great match with a research advisor and you've got funding lined up together, then that's a win-win. And you know what it's like living here. The climate's wonderful. We're fantastic. And we have the axe back, so campus life is better. So, staying at Berkeley for your PhD is, there are far worse options. And in many cases, it's the best thing to do.
And on that same note, how are Berkeley applicants viewed in the admissions committee? Do they have an advantage, a disadvantage? Is it neutral?
Well, typically, you have an advantage because the faculty members looking at the case. So, you're a known quantity. So they know, how good you are, your good points and bad points. So I don't think it's a disadvantage at all. And I know some of the strongest applicants every year are from Berkeley for the mechanical engineering program. And for me, like a 3.7, 3.8 from Berkeley is worth a 4.0 from a lot of schools.
Yep. So this came up several times. How will admissions be impacted by COVID? For example, will there be fewer seats because of the budget or other factors that will make things more difficult for applicants?
I think it will be different. I think in terms of the funding that's available for certain areas will be down. Funding available for other areas will be up. So I think in public health, there'll be more money. Epidemiology, there'll be more money. Fire research, there's going to be more money. I think, but shutting down a PhD program because of a 1-year glip is not going to happen. So I think it's probably going to be business as usual.
Okay, and what type of research is most favorable during the school year, summer, or a semester completely dedicated to research? It
really depends on this. It depends on the field and it depends on the student. Like some students, when they get here, they need to take courses so they get up to speed in the field, and so they can start the questions that they're asking. They have the technical background to answer them. In other fields that are newer, you can sort of jump on the train immediately and get stuff done. But for other fields, like the field I work in, it takes a year or two to get the background you need to start doing something that's significant. So it really depends on the field. And then it depends on your experience. I typically recommend that students in the beginning take classes, and then they slowly ramp up research, but that's just my area. And then sometimes you can get really lucky and get on a really, have a really creative period, and you just, you talk to your research advisor and just say, look, I don't want to do classes this semester. This research is going really well. I really want to just keep going. Is that okay? And, see what they say.
Okay. For transfer students, is our GPA a combination of our community college GPA and Berkeley GPA?
No, it's your Berkeley GPA.
Okay. And if you haven't really been involved in research, who can you ask for letters of recommendation for master's programs? I've been in clubs, but we don't have an active faculty advisor.
Ask the faculty in the classes that you're doing well in, and spend time with those faculty in office hours to try and so that they get to know you and they can write you as strong a letter as possible.
How do we know if a professor has an opening in their lab?
You ask them. Or you ask their students.
And what do we do if there are no available spots in faculty research groups for PhDs?
That happens sometimes. That's why it's important to apply to 4 or 5 schools. Because every faculty member has every faculty member has a different story every year. So some faculty, they have these huge grants come through and they've got 2 or 3 openings one year, and then the next year their grants don't work out and they don't have any. So it's almost like an industry where one year there's jobs and the other year there isn't. So that's why it's really important to apply to multiple programs. And also when you are applying to a particular school, that you do so with the idea that, I'm going to be looking for a certain, I want to see that there's 2 or 3 faculty in the school that I can work with. So if one faculty member doesn't have research funds, you can work with the other person. Or if you have a personal issue with the faculty member, they don't turn out to be the way that you don't really work very well together, then there are other options for you.
Are engineering club experiences useful in PhD admissions? How should it be leveraged?
It should be leveraged in your personal history statement. You can basically use it like working with other people, teamwork, getting along with people, developing social skills in technical areas. They're typically invaluable.
So what are the common motivations for going for an MS or an MEng degree versus a PhD degree?
Motivation. So for many people, it's to develop, for doing a master's is to get the technical skills they need to do the type of work they want to do in industry. So the MEng program has leadership components that the PhD program doesn't. The PhD program is really for if you're really interested in doing research and or you want to become an academic or become a teacher.
And what is the timeline for getting funding for a PhD program relative to the admissions application?
It should be almost immediate. And if it's not immediate, they will probably be asking you to, to talk to faculty to see if you can get funding. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute.
And which aspect do you think would be more important, a top school or a project that you really like?
A project that you really like. Because if you do a project that you really like, you're going to do fantastic work and you're going to be very happy doing that, as opposed to going to a school for the sake of going to a particular school where you're not really happy.
Sorry. Are there any benefits to switching schools for graduate school?
It depends on the research experience. And sometimes it's good because you just get a different academic experience, but you need to be careful and make sure that you've got a good research advisor and good research opportunities sorted out. So it really depends on the research opportunities available to you. And then also, are you going to be happy there or not?
If a student is in the DSP program at Berkeley, is it okay to mention this in the statement?
You don't need to. That's your own personal, you can, or I'm not the really person to ask for that advice about that, but your accommodations are your own private matter.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
That I've seen in, so if the accommodations, if the accommodations have helped your academic career. So for example, if your learning disability or the accommodations were discovered after you had a bad semester, for example, and you feel comfortable explaining that in your personal statement as to why you had that bad semester, that would be one way. If you feel comfortable, you can explain what happened and the DSP accommodations. But you are absolutely not obligated to write any of that. Do you want to keep going with questions, Oliver, or you want to?
Yeah, I can go for an extra 5 minutes. I'm conscious of the fact that, can we do that, Malcolm? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just did a piece here on visit days. These are the ones that I've noticed happening. It'll probably be a little different this year because of COVID-19, but this is mostly a timeline of what's happening. Again, visit days are really critical if you're interested in a PhD for fellowships and advisors seeing if you're a good fit. Again, if you're asked to go on these visit days, or even if they're virtual, don't do it unless you're really interested. If you are on these visit days, talk to as many graduate students as possible, and take advantage of it to look at, you get to see the insides of a university and their graduate program in a way that most people don't even ever get an opportunity. They're like a visit day on steroids. So take advantage of that and to get to know people. Take advantage of getting to meet graduate students to find out what it's like to live there. Like, just because a school has a phenomenal reputation and has a certain ranking, you may not enjoy living there. And also talk to as many faculty as possible and pay attention to them. If the faculty think that, you should just be like kissing the ground that they walk on because you're going to go to graduate school at their highly ranked school, ask yourself the question, what is it going to be like when I have to show up and say, hey, I'm sick, I'm not doing too well right now, can I have a few days off? Or I have a personal issue that I need to take attention. If their attitude is you need to kiss the ground that they walk on, they're not going to be very nice to deal with as people. So pay attention to that when you apply. And I know faculty are wonderful people, but unfortunately some of us are not very nice. And pay attention to that, because you are making a commitment as well. And so if they're not going to be nice people and are going to be rude to you when you're in visiting them, and that's when they're supposed to be nice to you, then working with them might be a nightmare. So pay attention to that. Even though the school may be terrific and may sound fantastic on paper, it's your own personal experience that's important, and it's a personal fit that's important as well. And ask yourself the question: you're going to be at a place for 5 years, and are you going to can you be creative there? Can you feel comfortable there? And are you going to transform yourself? So if you think about yourself now, and think about yourself when you just finished high school, and compare yourself academically then to now, hopefully you've seen that you've been transformed, and a PhD should go and transform you on another level again. And so you ask yourself that question. So the timeline looks something like as follows. So in late October, NSF fellowships are due. Early December, application deadlines are due. And then in December, people will start looking at the files. Then in February and March, you're going to be visiting in person or virtually. And in late February, most PhD admissions will have been sent out. Most declines, people hold back on the declines because they're waiting to hear back from NSF fellowships. But once the NSF fellowships are announced, which is usually the last Friday in March, then you'll see a wave of declines coming out. So if you haven't heard back from a PhD program that you're interested in by February, then it's usually that's not a good sign. And so, sending them in emails over and over again about admission generally will be more frustrating to you than will be successful. So just keep those deadlines in mind. The other thing that throws a lot of noise into this process is that, faculty write grants and have to wait on the grants. And sometimes those grants come in April or May or in the middle of the summer, and then they have openings. So sometimes they'll tell you, I have a grant due, I'm not sure what's happening. And, if you want to work with me, we can give you admission. I can't promise you any money. We can see if we can get you a teaching fellowship. And there will be situations like that that come up as well. April the 15th is the decision day for funded offers, however. So if you have an offer of funding from a university and you don't accept it by April 15th, then they can basically void that offer and give it to someone else. So be careful of the middle of April deadline, and just be wary of the fact that, you should start hearing back in February from schools. If you haven't heard back by Valentine's Day, I would sort of try and just be realistic about what your options are going to be like. Okay. The last thing I want to say is that the application process for graduate schools, especially if you're a junior, this is relevant, it's equivalent to a 3-unit class. It's going to take a lot of time. So give yourself time to do that. If you're taking, an excess number of classes this semester and you're going to apply to grad school, then I would recommend that you drop one class to give yourself room to do this application process properly. The second thing is that don't forget that help others help you. That's so important. So helping others help you means advocating for yourself and, imagining that you're giving these letters and statements and emails to your best friend who's going to help you. And so doing that will hopefully help you get through the process. And last, applying for a PhD is really a hybrid between applying for a job and applying to undergraduate. It's a totally different ball. Thinking it's either is a mistake. So be respectful of that when you're applying, and give yourself a chance. You can be a phenomenal student here, but it's possible that you just don't find that really good research match when you're applying for a PhD. That's nothing personal against you. That's just it's just the nature of the process every year. There is a randomness to it that everybody just, that's just the way it is. You're applying to a program which is going to fund you for 5 years. That's going to cost that program at least $250,000. And it will give you the opportunity to have an incredible life. And so, there's a serendipity in that process that unfortunately can't be locked down. So thank you for all your questions. I'll stay on for a few minutes to try and answer a few more, and I'm sorry for running over time.
Okay, so the number one question we have right now, Oliver, is if we do get rejected, what do we do after if we still want to get into a PhD program?
You apply again the following year. You apply again, but I would always, if you're in February and you're finding like there's, the slim pickings, have a backup plan. Like have a master's plan that you're going to apply for as well, that you can get into, have 1 or 2 backup plans available.
Okay. If your research interests are interdisciplinary, is it okay to apply to multiple departments at one school if such a policy exists?
Yes, it is. But just be careful that you don't fall through the cracks, and reach out to the faculty at those schools to tell them that you're applying and why you're applying to different programs.
What are ways to connect with professors during your junior year in order to get letters for the 5th-year masters besides going to their office hours?
Seeing if they have any, going to office hours, because everything's virtual right now. So going to their office hours for seeing if they have research experiences, talking to graduate students, talking to your GSIs to talk about their advisors and what opportunities their advisors have. So those are the ways I would do it this year.
Okay, and would you suggest asking letters from a PI, a professor at a different university who you work directly with, or the lead researcher of the group, your Berkeley professor? It sounds like there's 2 different research experiences.
Yeah, so if it really depends on which one is going to write you the stronger letter. So which one do you have a better relationship with, if you have to pick between one or the other? But generally, in that case, I've seen cases where people would ask both of those people to write a letter.
If I have a couple of no pass classes that is not graduation requirement, but I take it for fun, is it going to affect my chances?
No, because it shows intellectual curiosity, which is lovely.
Okay. If I don't have any work experience, is it going to affect the chance to get into a master's program?
No, but you should talk about your other experiences outside of class.
Okay, and then a similar question, if I have good grades and good letters, but I don't have any research experience, should I still apply to a PhD program?
Yeah, because it depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you're passionate about something, like when I applied to a PhD, I didn't have any research experience, but I knew what I really wanted to work on. So it's a matter of advocating for yourself that, like, this is an area I really want to work on. And just, this is where you advocate for yourself.
Okay, are interviews only for PhD applicants or for master's students as well?
Some schools will interview master's students, but typically the interviews are mostly for PhDs because they're trying to find a match and they're really it's like a job interview.
Okay. Does the admissions committee care more about upper division GPA than total overall GPA?
Really, they care about upper because they want to, some students just have their freshman year is often not the greatest. And so, as you get through in your junior year, you start taking more technical electives, you start taking more specialized classes. So doing well in those is important.
Is being an author or co-author on a paper a really big advantage?
It can be, but it depends on the paper. It depends on how good the paper is.
There was one more question here. If someone has a low GPA, does taking a semester off to do research increase chances of getting into a PhD program?
It depends on the research. I mean, it really depends on the research experience. You can have an amazing research experience, but doing it just for the sake of it, I would be careful about that. You really want to target it. Like, this is the research experience I really want to do. This is going to be amazing. It should be, you should really feel like this is going to be amazing. And you should be very motivated to do it.
How should you go about finding an advisor before applying to a PhD program?
Well, first of all, you should look at the school and see what's there. They won't, very few of them will say yes to you without going through the process, interviewing. Their students will talk to you and vice versa. So it's very rare that someone has ironed out a research advisor at a different school before the application process.
So currently, a lot of my programs still list a GRE requirement. When do you think programs will update that requirement?
I can't speak for every school. I don't know. They may not. I'm not sure.
Does interest in teaching have any influence in the application to the PhD program?
Yes, because it shows that you care about academics, and it shows that you have a curiosity. So yes, it can be very helpful.
Can industry experience help?
It can. It depends on the industry experience, but if it really depends on the industry experience and how you can talk about that in your statement of purpose.
Okay, and is taking grad level courses during your last semester at Berkeley a good idea?
It can be. It really depends on the course and it depends on the professor. I mean, some students have done that I've taught on their way to grad school and they've really enjoyed it. Other students just use their last semester at Berkeley just to, spend time with their friends. You'll also, if you are applying to a PhD program and things are successful for you, you're going to be traveling a lot. You're going to be visiting places. And even if you're not visiting places right now, you will be, preparing for interviews. So it'll be a pretty busy semester.
And when is a good time to ask for letters of recommendation if we're applying this fall?
Now, in this month.
Very good. Does the department to which the professor belong matter if department is similar in nature to the department we are applying to?
No, it can be completely fine. So a professor from material science and engineering at Berkeley or a faculty member in civil engineering writing a letter of recommendation for you if you're applying to mechanical engineering would be completely acceptable.
Is it appropriate to discuss reasons for low grades in lower division classes in the statement of purpose?
Yes.
What if your grades from spring 2020 are the best grades you've had at UCB?
Congratulations.
If we're graduating December 2021, do I have to apply by the 2020 deadline for the fifth year master's program, or can I apply for the next year starting fall 2022 cycle?
You should reach out to the department and ask. And just to the person whose grades were great in the spring 2020, so there are cases where that's happened. There are some people that the remote instruction just really benefited their way of learning, and so just as there were people who academically it was a total disaster for, there were other people that it was really successful for. So like I said, my statement of congratulations is not, I'm not trying to be facetious.
Are there any differences, I assume meaning in the admissions process, if you are an international student?
No, there aren't any.
Okay, we're at 6:45. Do you want to keep going, Oliver, or?
What about two more questions?
Okay. Is there anything we can do after submitting the application to increase our chance of acceptance?
Yes, reach out to the faculty member that you're interested in working with and say, I've applied. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Reach out to their graduate students as well.
Okay. Can you give some advice for transfer students who are interested in MS programs? Overall advice to transfer students.
Yeah, so, use your time here to build relationships with people, with instructors, so that, you can ask them for letters of recommendation will be easy, because that's one thing, you're going to need that for most master's programs. So, and also keep an eye out for the things that you're interested, what are the subjects you're interested in, what are the ones you're doing well in, because those are the ones that, that will sort of steer you to the courses that you're going to do for your master's. But take that time to build relationships, that's so important.
Great, okay.
And I just want to thank you all for being here today, and the 81 of you that stayed on till the very end. I also want to shout out to Melton for looking after the questions, and to Tracy for putting this together. So thank you all.
Thank you, Oliver, for taking the time this evening to give this workshop. I just want to say that this has been recorded. It will be sent out to everybody who registered for this webinar. And for those questions, especially those questions regarding fifth year deadlines, when do I apply, you should definitely reach out to the departmental graduate advisor for all questions regarding fifth year, especially for when you should apply, because there's a tricky deadline for that. And most of the fifth year programs will have their own information session, so keep an eye out in your emails from your department. Some of you also inquired about MEng, the Masters in Engineering program. They also do their own info session, so check on their website to see when that's happening. They usually do several during the fall semester. So with that said, thank you. Thank you again, Professor O'Reilly, for taking the time to talk about grad school and how to apply. Thank you, Tracy, for all of the behind-the-scenes technical support, and good luck to all of you.
Yeah, good luck with the applications, and go Bears.
Yes, go Bears.